Well, hello, welcome to the Saturday Standards Chat. Today is going to be a little bit different because I took Friday off. I needed to take Friday off for a reason. We did. And something had happened during the day Friday. I had somebody just absolutely at me in a most strange way, actually, because it's like, where is this coming from? It was totally crazy. But the big thing was I had posted something on the carnivore diet, and apparently that struck a moral chord or something within the individual, in which case I was called names and several other things. I responded like not taking it too seriously, and they're like, "You calling me names, bro?" And I said, "You just called me." Anyway, social media is a landmine type thing, but I do think this is worth bringing to people's attention, even though it may not be particularly real estate. It's because we all worry about our health, and we need to. If we're not, we need to really look at it. But I want to bring up this basic thing. I just pulled up Ask Google. Could ask anybody, but we're looking at popular fad diets primarily by the food group, which they restrict in the macronutrient profiles, because it brings to me something that we have known in science since like 1930, almost 100 years we've studied it. And we did get a study that we'll end with, which will show a little bit of not quite the same as what we had before, up to the 100 years up to this point. But we'll look at it, and I think it's worth you guys knowing about. Let's start with this right here. We're looking at the popular fad diets, and right now carnivore is out there, and it can give you massive weight loss, and the high protein is probably good for muscle retention, so that we're not scavenging the muscles for nutrients, but it raises your risk of colorectal cancers, and it's not healthy in the long run. There are some studies that haven't conclusively determined it, but the carnivore and paleo and similar type diets may actually increase your insulin resistance if stayed on it for a long period of time. Just what the preliminary research seems to show. So not only do you get booty cancer, which is there is no dignity in death as we pass away. But that one is particularly horrible on people. And guys, well, we're just a little bit different. We tend to delay certain types of detections and tests more so than women do. And I'm not trying to be sexist, but we do. And colorectal cancer is largely preventable without being overly invasive off the bat, unless you let it go too far. So carnivore, for that reason, is not a favorite, because it's fundamentally unsound health-wise, despite the YouTube quacks that are getting out there tell you what it says here. Cancer and diabetes, the negative risk, they're very high with carnivore. So here you are, you're trying to glow up, lose some weight, get in better shape, get some energy back, and that's okay short term, but you need not get your healthcare information from a guy selling real estate or YouTube or doctors who, for whatever reason, I guess their practices lack. They're given bad energy that they're having to be on the internet telling about stuff that's pretty quickly debunkable right off the bat. But cancer and diabetes very high with the carnivore. Extreme carbohydrate and plant elimination, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and some dairy. There are some people just eating sticks of butter because, I don't know, they think that's going to help some. I prefer butter over margarine. And they say, well, margarine is just one molecule away from plastic. That's true, because plastic is a molecule. It's a single molecule. It's a polymer. And margarine is not plastic, but there's one molecule away. So technically that's correct, whereas butter is a whole bunch of stuff in there. But anyway, I'm not trying to beat up on any of that kind of stuff. Just pointing out, this is what apparently triggered some roid rage, or something that resembles roid rage. Consumption of red and processed meat is linked to DNA damage and colorectal cancers, gut health. Zero fiber can disrupt the gut microbiome, worsening digestion and potentially increasing chronic disease risk. Just fact. I'm not condemning the carnivore diet. I'm just telling you fact. Deal with it. Now the paleo is basically saying fad diet, a little bit different. All of this is regurgitation of the same pop science fad type things. We're Americans. We like to get on a bandwagon every 5 or so years, get on something, whatever the latest trend that we are. It's easier to sell a house if you follow trends, right? It's easier to coax somebody into something new if you do the remodel so that they look like they follow the trends. Not many people are looking at the bones in the neighborhoods and everything. They're really looking at how pretty it is. And we're fascinated with pretty. But paleo, meat, fish, and vegetable, does allow some fruits and nuts and seeds. And this is, you're going to get some fiber. If you were going to go to a diet, I would not go carnivore. Too much risk of diabetes and cancer. It really is. There's just no fiber in it. And it can also cause other things. You know, I don't want to get graphic, but the dehydrator, your large colon is your dehydrator, and it needs to be a proper level of dehydrated. It doesn't need to be too dry. That could be a problem. And it doesn't need to be too fluidy, because that can cause weaknesses in you as you get older, weaknesses in the structures, because it's trying to move and it can't through the peristalsis. Again, I'm not a doctor, not playing one, I'm just able to read. So the paleo is probably better than the carnivore. I doubt it's as dramatic, because if you're not eating any fruits, nuts, or vegetables, you're probably toying with malnutrition. It's probably possible if it's not medically supervised. Now the Daniel fast, that was real cute. We liked that for a while because people glummed onto it. But it's a vegetable only, and we know that veganism and vegetarianism is lacking in nutrients. Just like the carnivore is the other side of the coin, the obverse to the reverse. Neither one of these are healthy diets because they are excluding entire groups of things. So Atkins is probably an older one, not as much of a fad diet. It's often prescribed to people with diabetes. It's low carb, so we help keep some of the insulin reaction down. High protein, so that's good to help the satiation, that sort of thing. Transitions from very strict to moderate carb intake over 4 phases, because they recognize, Dr. Atkins realized that carnivore would be a bad idea before it was even thought about. Just strictly no carbs whatsoever is just not brainy. It's just not wise. But even with it, it can get chronic disease risk. Heavy reliance on animal fats and proteins may increase oxidative stress and risk of cardiovascular disease and certain cancers. There are other types of low carb things. Remember, we had the avocado oil fad, the coconut oil fad, coconut water, and all. And it's just people like to glom onto something new because they think it's going to do something. Well, going from the very newest, let's go to something that is the oldest idea. And I think there's merit in this. And I responded to the person who was trying to drag me yesterday by saying, I think it matters in a great deal. The biggest problem we have, I don't think, is what we eat as American, the standard American diet. I think it's how much we eat. Now, we can certainly have better quality things, but I think it's much more, and those things, the paleo, carnivore, Daniel, Atkins, there was another one that was very similar to those that was before that, I think it was. Even like something like pescatarian. Pescatarian is like no red meat, perhaps, and they miss out on some amino acids, but they do get fish and fish oil, and they do help nutrition overall, as opposed to like pure vegetarian or veganism. Veganism is more of a religion and less of a diet. It's because it's got the mindset associated with it. But not eating anything animal is probably not going to be very healthy, science says. Same thing with eating only meat like the carnivore. Science says that's not very wise either. So let's look at this this one right here, what I pulled up. And this is going to be giving you some about 1930 is when we did the first study on lower life forms, animals. And that gets us to this whole virtue signal by ending all testing on animals. We don't want animals to suffer. Nobody wants animals to suffer, but there's a reason we test on life forms versus petri dishes, because it's a big leap between the petri dish and bacteria to the person. Now we've got some promise that AI might help connect some dots that we humans haven't drawn. But this is going to get to the idea that I had, the calorie restriction, the simply not eating constantly. And that's been a word that's been back against the diabetes and pre-diabetes kind of stage. They'll say, just don't eat a lot, but eat constantly to kind of keep those spikes out, where you get too much insulin and maybe then you don't get enough insulin and vice versa. So they try to regulate out. But it would appear that as far back as the 1930s, we knew enough to know that eating constantly was not going to be healthy. So the basic idea was, let's eat the minimum amount of calories of nutrient-rich food at a pre-specified period of time. I think it even involves like the 12-hour fast that we get into. Sorry, I'm old. Had a brain fart there. We can't say brain fart on a real estate show. So I had a senior moment. That's probably ageist, but I guess I am an aged person, so I can say that. Anyway, I was having trouble thinking autophagy and mitophagy, which is a cellular relation inside of the cell, where the cell kind of cleans itself up internal to the cell. And it does that over a period of time where fasting do help. And so it may be, if we combine just simply eating like we did in the 70s, where we had 3 meals a day at preset times at the dinner table, where mom or dad, or I'm not getting the family structure, but we had meal times. And then we didn't eat all night long until the morning, where we had our breakfast. So we did have a sort of an autophagy opportunity, although it's only 12 hours. It was something. And then we had smaller plates, smaller portions. We didn't have as much packaged things. Swanson hadn't invented the pre-made meal, frozen meal, TV dinners. I don't want to get into ZZ Top if we've got any toppers out there. TV dinners that go into my head. I like the enchilada and the teriyaki too. I even like the chicken if the sauce is not too blue. Anyway, we've gotten into this processed food. Everything's quick and easy and just around the corner, and we just eat too much. I think we eat too much too often and of very poor quality. And all of the stuff that we eat has to be run through our digestive system and out the other end. We need some time to give our bodies rest. That's my idea. I'm not a doctor on TV, and I'm not a doctor on YouTube. I'm not a doctor anywhere, but I'm just trying to be a little common sense. I think it's more about calorie restrictions and better quality food. There's a clean food movement that's out there that makes sense. The raw food movement doesn't, because if you eat a lot of plant, you can't digest them if they've not been kind of cooked and boiled down. Plus, we get a lot of E. coli. Most of our E. coli outbreaks come from, believe it or not, vegetables. So this is 2017. Studies show that most short-lived species, such as yeast cells, benefit from caloric restricted diets. Could the same be true for species that live longer? Researchers in 2 parallel studies, one conducted by the National Institute of Aging, the other by the University of Wisconsin. They do have a discrepancy here, but I think it's promising enough, and it goes back to the 30s, like I say, this whole series of things. Explore the life-prolonging and health effects of calorie restricted diet in rhesus monkey. Amazing, I can't say calorie, but I can get rhesus monkey, but arrive at different results. Resolving the discrepancy, researchers teamed up to compare their data and their study designs. The University of Wisconsin, UW, study found that rhesus monkeys that were fed a calorie-restricted diet, which contained 30% fewer calories than the control group's diet, survived about 28 years for males and 30 for females, above average for such primates. I don't know. If we never give our gut biome chance to regenerate, if we never give our insides chance to be empty, where we're stretching them to the limit like a balloon, could we be exposing them much more hours and minutes and days over a lifetime to some toxins that could potentially cause digestive cancers? I don't know. Are we taxing our endocrine system? I don't know. The basic idea is we're going to feed them good food, but we're not going to overfeed them. And lo and behold, the diet survived 28 years for male and 30 years for females, above average. In contrast, the National Institute on Aging found no significant effect on calorie restriction on survival. We don't know what the difference was in their actual diets that these two different studies did. As they age, rhesus monkeys are vulnerable to many of the same diseases as humans, including cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. Data from both of these studies show fewer. That's something I want to say. Even though they may not have come to the same conclusion, they both show fewer age-related health conditions in a calorie-restricted group compared to their controls. To me, that seemed like a pretty... They agree. Now, they may have disagreed a little bit, but they agreed there. Eating less can translate to living longer if we're not depriving stuff. All right, so in the new study published January 17 in Nature Communications, researchers compared data from two previous studies and provided updated longitudinal comparisons. They presented several factors likely to contribute to the difference in outcomes, including diet composition. That's what I'm talking about. We don't know what University of Washington fed them in their nutrient-rich stuff versus the Center for the Aging, the National Aging. But we do know this: in both groups, they had fewer health risks in their older age, their elder age. And I've lost track of a friend of mine several years back when I just got tired of the Waffle House. I used to see him at the Waffle House. Sam Ingram. He used to be the president. He was not secretary. What do you call it? Commerce. Not commerce. Having another senior moment. Maybe I need to get something sweet, get some blood sugar up. Commissioner of Education under Ray Blanton. And then he also was president of MTSU and president of Motlow, I guess it was. I knew him after pretty much all of his professional life wound down. And he was this little skinny guy. I think he probably won some genetic lottery, but he didn't need a whole lot. And he was the first one to introduce me to this study back. I think his went back to the 70s that he was familiar with, and there's even older ones to the 30s. But he just basically said, it appears that we eat too much, right? Our environment can kill us, or we could kill ourselves with food. And he didn't eat all that much, and he quoted a study saying that, in fact, we had done some study, found out that the minimum amount of calories necessary to survive healthily gave us the longest lifespan and the less disease. It's kind of my brain that is thinking in here, gosh, we need to give our colons a rest. We need to give our stomachs a rest. We need to give our stomach, if we've packed it too full, time to kind of shrink back down. We need to give our kidneys time to kind of ease up a little bit. And some of these diets are bad about causing renal disease because they affect the kidneys and raise uric acid and gout, like the ones that eat a lot of meat and not a lot of vegetables. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not trying to talk anybody into or out of anything, but I got added pretty darn quick to somebody telling me I was ignorant and didn't understand. I didn't understand life, and the carnivore's good and all this blah blah blah. They're just true believers, and you're not going to change a true believer. But I do believe more than artificial food dyes and whatever, and they may have an indirect effect on us if it makes us want to eat more. I just think we eat too much, too often, and we don't go through the natural cycles of our body. It's just my theory. Maybe it's worth knowing, maybe it's not worth knowing. I don't know. But anyway, that's my little bit of a show. I have recently written a song, and it kind of hit the gym bros a little hard. And it's about look maxing. Look maxing is a mental issue that's affecting our youth, our young men. They have, just like we hear of the social pressures on the young girls to be perfect or whatever, or something's not big enough, or it's not here, right spot, or too wide here, or too big. Guys, our gender, and looks maxing is taken to extreme where there were actually people breaking their facial structures to try to get themselves cheekbones or something. I don't know. And it gets into body dysmorphia. We would recognize some of the things that go along with body dysmorphia: anorexia, bulimia, things of this nature. We even see with the GLP-1, the peptides, people are abusing them and developing issues because it's a mental issue, it's not a physical issue, and it's affecting our young men. But we see a lot. Do a Google. This would be your homework if you're up to it. Google the news for bodybuilders and sudden death, cardiac problems or whatever, cancers and whatever. The lifestyle of trying to bulk up beyond what we're naturally made to be is a problem. And that was something else that Sam Ingram had an idea on. He told us, he said, look, and also a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon also told me this. I think he's probably the one who told me most recently. He told me that we end up with rupture tears constantly, like 1 or 2 a week, constantly in his practice, because people are trying to lift heavy. They're trying to lift big. They're trying to get the bigger upper body. And what they're doing is they're putting unnatural loads on their skeletal system, the skeletal muscular system. And even though the muscle may be huge up here, it's still hanging by something a little bit bigger than a dental floss. And that doesn't get any bigger or any stronger. You're just stretching the crap out of it. And so they get a lot of rupture tears. They get a lot of cardiomyopathy. It's just not good to try to push yourself to unnatural limits. And that's all I'm trying to say to my community, anybody who follows or listens to me. And at the very end, I quoted 1 Samuel, and I have it pulled up on the side. It just says, the Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. That's from 1 Samuel 16:7. I was just trying to support our youth, our male youth, who seem to be the most neglected group of people out there. And they're struggling just like all of our youth are right now, girls and the boys. And we just need to support them. And maybe a divorced dad getting back into the gym life and trying to kind of max out his looks. That's not bad to try to be healthy. But if we're using steroids and peptides, and we're using the hormones and the things to bulk up and lift, maybe that's not the right message we should send to our younger people, that makes them somehow less than or inferior. So anyway, look up look maxing, look up real maxing. Real maxing is just being the authentic you, working on the man inside or woman. Inside, fix the inside first, because if the inside's rotten, the outside's not going to be good no matter what it looks like. That's the end of the show. It's a rambly one. I'm not going to cut it. You'll just have to hear me have my 2 senior moments I had when I couldn't think of words I don't normally use on a daily basis. And we'll see you next week. Hopefully I'll get you done on Thursday. Fall back to Friday if not. We'll see you then.